Hey there guys, now with Trading Cards. Today we're going to be discussing how the new deck construction rules for the D-Series Standard will end up affecting deck building from not just the new Standard, but as well as the Premium format as a whole, as well as just how deck building is about to just get completely broken. Oh, open. Up and open. Yeah. So now that we have the great nations, all 6 of them, 5 of them going to be really interesting, with the 6th one just being Bermuda, so Bermuda just is still a clan. I guess it doesn't really affect their deck building too much, but there is still some major things to take into account. So now all the great nations exist. How you deck build is, of course, you take one nation and build around it in Standard. In Premium, however, you end up choosing that clan to play with, but if you choose to use any of the new nation cards, you can play them within any of the clans that are associated with that nation. That includes with the new Soetia, which I know I'm mispronouncing, I'm going to keep mispronouncing it. All of the clans within it for the previous Zoo clans, plus Aquaforce and Grand Blue, can now use all the new Soetia cards, which is just something very interesting. So we could end up seeing some very interesting playstyles for Aquaforce and Grand Blue because of that, and some... I think Grand Blue might end up getting some weird shenanigans, and it's going to be pretty cool for the Premium format. But with that out of the way, let's get into the big topic about the new D-Series Standard rules, and that is the Ride deck. With the Ride deck here, you choose 4 cards at grade 0, 1, 2, and 3 from your main deck, and this does count towards your 50 card deck total, and these will be counted towards your 4 copies of each of those cards within the main deck, and you set them aside at the beginning. However, they already have to be pre-prepped, as they have to be in their own sleeves separate from the main deck, but those do not necessarily have to be in each individually, or all of them have to be in the same own sleeve. So you can have your main deck of 46 cards be in one sleeve type, which it has to be, but the other 4 cards, which will become your Ride deck, can all be in different sleeves, but none of those sleeves can be the same as the main deck. So, pretty similar to how G-Zone was at first, but then they're like, they all have to be the same sleeve, and I'm like, okay, I guess just in case we get some random effect that shuffles the G-Zone, which I don't, did we? If we did, it was like one random thing. It happened. But it's very interesting now. We are going, because it's like, so we went from the original series, the G series, now we have our main deck and our G zone. Then we went to the V series, which is our main deck, plus gifts and tokens and whatever else. And now we have just the main deck and the Ride deck. But set 1 is also confirmed to have tokens, or at least a token. We don't know what it's for. It'll be interesting to see what that is for. I imagine that'll probably end up going to the Soetia, but, you know, I could be completely wrong on that. And because of that, we now have, technically it's slimmed down to just the main deck again, but we're still going to have things like tokens to take into consideration whenever you are sleeving your cards, which is always an important thing, of course, when that comes to deck building. But on the topic of the Ride deck, since this is part of your 50 card main deck and you set them to the side at the beginning, by the fact that you are taking 3 additional normal units out of your deck that you are confirming to be your Ride targets, if you wish, as from what we can still understand, you can still normal Ride from your hand, as the new Persona Ride mechanic is confirmed to only work when riding from hand. And depending on how that works, which I'll get to in a few minutes, could blow open deck building. But back to what I was saying about you moving these 4 cards, 3 extra from what you normally would, to the side. With your opening 5 cards into your 6th, into your 7th card, if none of them are triggers, you have approximately a 40% chance of hitting a trigger any of your opening checks, essentially, which is insane, because by taking up those 3 extra cards, you just increased your chances of hitting a trigger up by a total of 6%, which may not seem like a lot at first, but remember, every single time that you take a card out of your deck that is not a trigger, that snowballs by an extra 2%, which is just insane, especially with over triggers being a thing. Everyone's like, you only get 1, so, you know, the chance of you hitting that, I'm like, yes and no. Since now that we have 3 extra cards confirmed out of your main deck, you're actually increasing your chances of hitting that over trigger, only by a slim amount, but it is still very important to know. about that. Speaking of the over triggers, they are now have the official English translation, which is here on screen, and how they exactly work. So whenever you trigger an over trigger at all, it ends up removing itself and you draw a card and apply its trigger effect. Was trigger checked as, if it was a damage check, it simply just removes itself and applies the 100 million. But if it's a drive check, it applies its 100 million, then ends up activating an additional effect. This Cray Elemental one, which will be in all the starter decks, simply says apply its trigger power again. And with that, that's gonna be already a pretty big deal, because over triggers are looking really nutty, so you're gonna want to play an over trigger in every deck. There's gonna be like almost no reason not to. Some people I've talked to make the arguments like, well, you play 4 heals, don't you, in like every deck? And I'm like, no. But mostly, but no, because you could still make some interesting meme 16 critter, you know, like 16 stand decks or whatever, and those can work just fine. But the fact that the over triggers are so good means that you're probably in both standard and premium going to be playing an over trigger in every single deck, especially because if you just even draw into it, it's a 50,000 shield, and it only removes itself if you check it, which means that if you can, you know, do superior guarding stuff with Negra Nora, I think is what it is in Grand Blue, this G-Guard here, it will let you basically loop it out and make, let's see, so you call it like another 10k grade 1. And actually a lot of Grand Blue cards can go up to like, or at least a few defensive ones can go up to 20k shield, so that's 70, 85, which means that if you put it with your 12k most likely Grand Blue boss, that means you're already sitting at 97,000, so a simple intercept will shut down a Zoa attack, and that's just that's quite nutty. And the fact that you could just also instantly mill it out if you need to, if you want to do those kind of defensive shenanigans. Now, we don't know necessarily how great that is going to be, but it's still really good. In fact, speaking of the Grand Blue Premium, now we have the new Ghosty Beatrice. We can use this with the Mega Nora combo with Cannoneer to basically have a super easy denial gripping within Grand Blue, as well as we can, if we need to block something like a Zoa attack, can go into the over trigger effect right here. Totally was not forgetting everything I was just trying to say. But the fact that we can have things like this, it's going to make premium ever so infinitely more interesting to build for, as well as the fact that standard, now that all the clans are going to be merged together, means that we're going to have very interesting playstyles that can go into premium decks that weren't originally there. So let's say that we now have the new spikes, right? Spike-ish cards within the new Dark States. Well, what if they maintain their G-Series abilities of binding themselves to call them out? If they do keep that, that means in Premium Gear Chronicle, with all the binding shenanigans they can do even more time leap extensions into crazy stuff, since you can play all the new Dark State stuff in any of the Dark Zone clans, which is just gonna be extremely nutty. Of course, it's gonna make Premium crazy as hell, but I do like the fact that the Overtrigger is a 50,000 shield. I think that the 100 million power is just stupid. Like, why? Like, it's fun in standard and stuff, but in premium, that card is just gonna be so nutty. Being able to put 100 million power on any race standard is just gonna win you the game, most likely. Especially if you play it with an Ultima. Like, if it's still in your deck and you go into Ultima, you're just... Which will actually be very interesting, because if you do get into your hand, this may actually make the return of Legion decks, at least with something like with Ultima, if you really need to have that secured backup. And if you really need to play some kind of force spam deck, you can play the Blaster Blade Alfred deck. But you also have Tarna, so if need be, you can always play copies of Alfred Exif, that if it's not in your hand but still in the deck, you can play out the Tarna to instantly go into it, do the Legion, and then on your next turn, assuming that you're survived, can go into the Ultima if you need to recycle the Overtrigger back into your deck. But with that being said, that's all I really got for today. We got very interesting deck building things going on for both Standard and Premium going into the future. And I just cannot wait to see what's more of it, especially since, I guess is the real last thing, the fact that we have the Ride deck means that you technically only need one copy of your boss grade 3 card, which is just going to make budget building so much more better. Of course, we do have the Persona Ride mechanic. We don't know how it works, because it can either work one of two ways. Simply whenever your grade 3 rides over this, that's the same name, do a thing. Or it could be, which is my personal theory, you transfer the name and the abilities of the card you Persona Ride onto up to the card that you rode upon, which can be absolutely insane. So that means that you can either basically have your Persona Ride be your confirmed grade 3 so that you can ride whatever else on top of it, or because the Persona Ride rules are still there, you can just be like, alright, I'm going to stack my deck full of Persona Rides, play this out, and then have my finishing turn grade 3 be my grade 3 in my ride deck, so I can then ride over it, depending on how everything works. Of course, like I just said, Persona Riding works from hand, but depending on how things work, it could lead to some very serious stuff. Especially with just the pure idea that you can have your finisher grade 3 be in your ride deck, so that you can just at any time be like, alright, this is the card I'm going to need. However, since they are making things Persona Ride right now, I'm pretty sure they had that intent in mind, so they said Persona Riding will only work from hand, but just always going to come down to how they make things in the future, and I'll make sure to keep you guys updated whenever serious news like that comes out, because it makes me genuinely excited as well. So, with that being said, keep playing the games you want to play, and as always, have fun.